Hello, church. Welcome to 1 Kings chapter 14 and 15. It is so good to be with you again today. I want to start off by saying this. If you are one of those people who reads through the Old Testament chapters and sometimes you get a little bit confused with the names, welcome to my club. Here we've got, I love how Kevin said yesterday or the other day, he talked about Ray and Jerry. I'm like, I get stuff like that. And here we have these two competing kings, if you will, in this, what you could even describe as the ultimate clash of clans. For some of us, they'll get that. But here you have Rehoboam and Jeroboam, kings that are in competition with each other, both vying for Israel and the tribes within Israel. Both of them named their son the same name, Abijah. And then there's a prophet named Ahijah. And so you have Ray and Jerry and Abijah and Ahijah and another Abijah. And it's all, if that's a little confusing to me, or to you, it is to me too, we're on the same page. Anyways, here we go. I wanted to say this. In chapter 14, verse 1 to 6 or 1 to 7 or so, you recognize that Ahijah the prophet has foreknowledge from the Holy Spirit, and Jeroboam's wife's disguise does not fool him for an instant. He actually even knows who's at the door before she even gets there at the sound of her footsteps, and the guy is basically blind. All of those things set up to trick him did not work because the Holy Spirit gave him foreknowledge. There's other examples in the New Testament of how the Holy Spirit gives foreknowledge. In Acts chapter 10, he gave it to Peter. In Acts chapter 20, he gave to Paul. Acts 21 to Agabus. In 2 Peter, as an example, he gave Peter foreknowledge of his coming end of his life. All of that to say this. Just be careful that when you hear stories about somebody, let's say, who follows Satan or has some kind of satanic power, maybe through witchcraft or something, that you don't get impressed with that. Satan has never created a thing in his life, nor can he. The best that he can do is counterfeit. And so we ought not to be impressed with his power, but to celebrate God who has the ultimate power, of which this story is an example of. So you could spend some time praising the Lord about his wonder-working power. Amen? That you could get right out of there in chapter 14. Then I want to say something in chapter 14 still, but in verse 12 and 13. Here it talks about a boy who is the only one in his family in whom the Lord had found anything good. And yet the Lord took him home early. Church, when we wrestle, when we lose people in our lives who are righteous, have lived God-fearing lives, and seem to go home way too early, we have unanswered questions that we will probably never fully answer in this lifetime. But what we know and can be reminded of is that the Bible gives us hope for that very thing. In Genesis chapter 5, Enoch walked with God and then was no more. And it's considered a blessing that God took him home. He was the lucky one. In Psalm 116, it talks about, from the Lord's perspective, death, it says death is precious in the eyes of the Lord. When the death of the saints is precious in the eyes of the Lord. That's how he sees it. His saints are coming home to be with him. In Isaiah 57, it talks about how the righteous are being spared. When they pass away, they're being spared from further evil in this world. And that is one way of recognizing that sometimes what we see as premature death is God calling people home to spend eternity with him. And that is where our hope ultimately lies. When we recognize Revelation 21, the first few verses, maybe 1 to 4 or so, talk about this beautiful life with the Lord. That is where our hope is. And so if you are one of those among many who wonders, why did God call so-and-so home so early? We could even come from this chapter here in 1 Kings, recognize that we ought to trust the Lord in all these things. And although all of our questions will not get answered, we have this incredible hope for all of eternity because of Jesus. And that is something to celebrate. And then in 1 Kings chapter 15, you have the account of Abijah the king, Asa the king, Nadab, and Baasha, these kings. And each time it says something about these kings. It makes a comment about how they had done in the eyes of the Lord. And the author makes very clear that if you wanted to know the history lesson about all the things they accomplished, you would have to read a different book, which is not in the Bible and is not around today. But this is written for a different purpose. This is written for the purpose of analyzing how has that person lived their life in the eyes of the Lord. And we know that in many verses. Just as an example, Romans 14 would remind us that we will all have to give an account one day before the Lord. And Matthew chapter 12, Jesus said that even every empty word that we speak will be held to an account. And in 2 Corinthians 5, we know that everyone will receive what is due him, whether for the good they have done or for the bad they have done. We will be held to an account. And so we ought to live our lives in view of, what does my life look like from the perspective of the Lord? How does my life, how does the Lord see in his eyes how I'm living? And that's a great question we could ask the Lord today and say, Lord Jesus, is there something in my life in which I need to improve on according to your eyes? And in your eyes, is there something that I'm doing well? Talk to the Lord about those things today and celebrate your day with Jesus.